Through its special pickup program. Every day you'll find people disposing of household items and other trash. And if it's not hazardous material, batteries, or grass clippings, the city will pick it up, usually at no cost. When you call 286-8282 for a special pickup, let the city know what you have and whether it's at the curb or alley. This home requires 3 pickups. One crew handles only brush, another bulky items, a third old appliances.
We just like to provide these services for our citizens to help keep our communities clean. Brush, we ask for people to put neatly in piles so that they can get picked up by the appropriate trucks. Sometimes we can send a 2-man crew out on a regular garbage truck to pick it up if the brush item is not that huge. But otherwise, we would send out a apprentice loader or a skid to pick up big amounts of brush. Now with furniture and bulky items, depending on how big that is also, we send out 2-man crews on a garbage packer. Otherwise, we would send out a skid loader to pick up the bulky items.
The crews that collect the larger appliances do double duty, also distributing new and replacement garbage and recycling carts. Sanitation crews made some 280,000 special pickups last year, hauling away about 36,000 tons of debris. There is a charge for certain construction and building materials.
When someone calls in for a special pickup, it takes an estimated 1 to 10 working days. After 10 working days, if that collection is not collected for that citizen, we would hope the citizen will provide another phone call to let us know. We like to provide our services for our citizens. In some cases, some of our citizens are elderly, some of them are handicapped, or some of them just don't have means of transportation to get to our self-help centers. That's why we don't mind providing the services for them for a special pickup.
Calls for special pickups that once went to the district yards now go to the DPW customer service or call center in the municipal building.
Good morning, Department of Public Works Call Center. This is Latricia. May I help you?
And your address?
And your first name?
What's your last name?
And what are we picking up?
Brush at the curb of the alley.
I'll put a request in for replacement garbage cart for you, sir.
All right, somebody should be out there within 1 and 10 business days, okay? You're welcome. Have a good day.
Listen, have yourself a pleasant day. Anything else we can do for you?
There are on average about 750 calls a day, about 200,000 calls a year. 95% are for sanitation, including those who want special pickup.
If they want to call and maybe not wait online quite as long, they can call later in the week, and maybe after holidays and Mondays we're really busy. That would help a lot if we could spread the workload out a bit throughout the week. Or they could go online and at mpw.net and put in the same request that we would put in. We're open from 7 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. And then after that time, the city hall operator has the same program, and they enter requests as well. But they wear many hats at that, after hours, so they may not be as specific as or as helpful as we can be. So it's probably better to call us during the daytime hours.
If you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can skip the phone call and take your items directly to one of 2 city self-help centers.
Our main focus is actually for the city of Milwaukee residents to be able to bring in all type of different items and debris as far as brush, furniture, appliances, used motor oil, used antifreeze, grass clippings, any type of material basically that can be disposed of that's non-hazardous can be taken generally at the self-help station.
Here too, the debris is counted in tons, about 50,000 tons annually. There are about 350,000 visits a year, on average more than 1,000 a day.
Once you're here, you're stopped usually at the front gate for your identification, let you know you're a City of Milwaukee resident. From there, you're either pointed in the direction of which area that you're going to be bringing and what type of material that you have. We don't take battery acid, chemicals that can be considered toxic, paint, and things of that nature we don't take. We take 5 tires per household, and also we take up to 2 cubic yards of material, construction material, which is considered concrete, dirt, plywood, tile, things of that nature that would be considered anything that you would do construction-wise.
Some of the materials are taken to landfills, but generally, if it can be recycled and there's a market, it will be recycled.
We like volume, we like the number of customers that are coming in, and we can hope to even increase it in the future. That was the reason of the increasing of the hours, and hopefully letting the public know that we're open for longer business hours that will be able to help them get their material out of their households and maybe their neighborhood cleanups and things of that nature and bring them over to us.
To arrange a special pickup, call 286-8282 or stop at one of the self-help centers.
Open Monday through Friday, 7 to 7.
And then on Saturdays, it's 7 to 3.
Sundays,
8 until noon.
For information on locations for safe disposal of household hazardous waste, call 225-2066. All this information and more is also available on the web at mpw.net. And as you prepare for fall, a reminder that leaf collection in the city runs from October 1st to November 16th.
It's important to have a food safety month to educate both consumers and restaurant workers about food safety. And the theme for 2004 is Be Aware When You Prepare.
A government survey says most foodborne illnesses occur in the home, even though most people think food processing plants or restaurants are the main culprits.
Well, they probably do a lot of different things wrong, and in 1997 the FDA came out with some 4 basic food safety principles to kind of drive home the message of what's really important and what needs to be done. And those were to clean, to separate, to cook, and to chill. The first basic food safety principle is clean. You always want to wash your hands before you start preparing food. So to properly wash your hands, you want to use warm water, get your hands wet, put some soap on, scrub for 20 seconds, make sure you get in between your fingers. Then you want to rinse your hands and use a paper towel or a clean cloth towel to dry your hands. Another important step in cleaning is dishwashing. You always want to use hot soapy water and a clean dish towel. Studies have shown that 67% of home sponges contain fecal bacteria, so you probably want to limit your sponges to areas that aren't going to be used for food preparation. You can sanitize your dishes at home by using plain bleach and water. Just use about a capful of bleach in the water. And then after you wash your dish, you can dip it in that bleach water solution for about 30 seconds, and that'll help sanitize your dishes. And then you always want to let your dishes air dry. Using a towel to air dry dishes can spread bacteria from one utensil or dish to another, so it's always best just to let them air dry, and it saves time too. The next food safety principle is separate. You always want to keep your raw meats separate from what we call ready-to-eat foods, or foods that aren't going to be cooked any further before eating. The easiest way to do this is to have 2 separate cutting boards, one for raw foods and one for ready-to-eat foods. So we're going to make the hamburger patties and then place them on a plate to take over to the frying pan. And we want to make sure that we don't use the same plate when the burgers are done. We grab a clean plate to put the cooked burgers on. When placing foods in the refrigerator, it's always good to use a tightly sealed container and place the meats at the bottom of the refrigerator, so in case the container does leak, it won't leak over any ready-to-eat foods like your hot dogs. Meats are considered a potentially hazardous food. Particularly lunch meats and hot dogs are dangerous for pregnant women. There's a bacteria called Listeria that's commonly found in hot dogs, lunch meats, soft cheeses, and sometimes ice cream. The FDA and the USDA advise pregnant women never to eat undercooked hot dogs and also to cook their lunch meats before they eat them because of the dangers of miscarriages or stillbirths. The only way to tell when a food is really done is to use a food thermometer. In the telephone surveys done by the USDA and the FDA, only 5% of consumers report using a thermometer to check food temperatures. In the Utah study that was done of observing people actually cooking, only 5% of the cooks actually used a thermometer to check when the chicken was done. When the chicken was done, according to the cooks, the chicken was tested and it was found that 82% of that chicken, that's 82%, was undercooked. So using a thermometer, again, is the only way to really tell when food is done. According to the USDA, 1 out of every 4 hamburgers turns brown in the middle before it actually reaches the required temperature of 160 degrees. So color is not a good indicator of when food is safe to eat. Some people still like to eat their burgers rare or medium rare, and that's allowed as long as you're a healthy individual. What we don't recommend is that the young, the elderly, or the immunocompromised eat rare undercooked meats. With a steak, as long as it hasn't been marinated or injected, the bacteria is generally only on the outside of the steak. So when you cook the steak, you're destroying the bacteria on the outside of the steak, but there really isn't any on the inside, so that's why it's still acceptable to eat rare or medium rare steaks. And now we're getting into our 4th food safety principle, which is chilling. We're not going to eat these burgers right away, so we're going to place them into a shallow container and put them in the refrigerator for later. As you saw, they're still nice and hot, but it's okay to put hot foods in the refrigerator. However, what you don't want to do is tightly cover them. When you do that, the steam and heat builds up inside the container and the food stays warm for too long of a time. Once it's all cooled, maybe later on in the day or the next day, then you can put the cover on tight to stop things from dripping in there. You always want to have a thermometer in your refrigerator and make sure your refrigerator is at 41 degrees or below. When thawing foods, it's best to thaw foods in the refrigerator. What you don't want to do is leave foods thawing out at room temperature. That's a very dangerous practice that a lot of consumers still do.
The health department has also produced a video called Gross Out to target teens at their schools with food safety awareness.
We've been going into schools and giving the food safety presentations, and it's really based for home food safety, but what we're hoping is that teens are exposed to this food safety information. They can carry it over into any jobs in food service they might have. And just wanted to mention that with the paper kit is available to anyone who educates teenagers simply by calling the health department. 414-286-3674.
You can also call that number for many other food safety tips or check the health department webpage at milwaukee.gov. September marks the 10th annual Food Safety Education Month, and people apparently are paying attention to the 4-step program.
Since 1997, when they introduced these principles, that the amount of people that are aware of the food safety principles and report using the food safety principles have increased.
And those 4 steps again are?
They are clean, separate, cook, and chill.
By the early 1900s, the Milwaukee Road Sewage Complex in the Menominee Valley was the city's largest employer. Some 5,000 people worked there. Many walked to work.
So these people came from this neighborhood, walked into the valley, worked for the railroad, and the railroad paid in silver dollars. So whenever payday was, the taverns, the bars, the restaurants, the beauty salons, whatever was here was paid in silver dollars. So hence the name Silver City, and that is more than likely the origination of the name.
The Silver City neighborhood runs from 31st Street to the West Milwaukee boundary, from Pierce to Greenfield. This building on Pierce, built in 1875, dates to the earliest days of the railroad. This home on South 38th to 1885. Duplexes from the early 1900s seem to dominate this area of affordable, quality homes. Some 5,000 people live here. 45% of the homes are owner-occupied. 55% are rental units.
It just was a really nice area to move to.
Betty and her husband moved to Silver City over 30 years ago, raised a family, opened a business on National Avenue 22 years ago. They plan to stay.
We were really comfortable, and the neighborhood was had everything that we really wanted. It had the stores in the area. We've had wonderful neighbors over the years. That's what keeps us here. And then with the business, it's very handy to be only a half a block away, and has been. It just would be very hard to move from the ties that we have.
Silver City may be even more of an ethnically diverse area than other city neighborhoods.
Hmongs and Asians and Japanese and Chinese and Mexican and Puerto Rican and African American and German and European. And I mean, it's just, this is probably the largest melting pot in the city of significant numbers of almost every ethnic group that is represented in the city of Milwaukee.
I actually start my insurance agency here since 1991, and I've been here since. And eventually the location here just become more and more attractive to the people. Since 1991, the whole neighborhood has been changed a lot. I can see that change a lot. Mainly I can see that changing from more diverse of people. That's the most I can see.
Because of the many ethnic shops and businesses, the city and owners proclaimed National Avenue from 31st to 39th as the Silver City District, an international experience.
I hope that we can bring more business into the National Avenue and the Silver District area here, and also looking at that we can actually attract more business here. The city is helping, and through Linton Boulevard West, everyone's kind of working together and want to put this into a better neighborhood.
For a while, we looked like we were going to be nothing but secondhand stores and storefronts. And that's not good for a viable retail neighborhood. But what we'd like to see, and I think that myself and the other people who are involved in this, want to see the success of all of the businesses. We want to see people come and feel comfortable in this area. And we believe that the things like we have terrific housing stock. The older homes in this neighborhood basically were European settlers, people that came here, built very, very nice homes. Their quality, it was a blue-collar area, but they're very substantial homes. They'll be here for a long, long time. And what we've seen is more and more people are beginning to reinvest in them. And with these things taking place, we think the long-term aspect is good.
And then there's new housing going up. We've had 11 new homes being built to the west between 37th and 39th Street. And that's a wonderful addition to land that has sat for years and years and was not developed. I have been through a couple of the homes, and they're wonderful. It's just really nice for the area to have new housing, have young families that are moving in, and that's what keeps a neighborhood vibrant. I've just seen an enormous amount of businesses coming and going over the years, but in the last couple, we've seen some stabilization. We have had new businesses moving into the area. This is a very, very important street for the city, and then especially with the valley.
The city and private sector are working to redevelop the valley with new businesses. Area residents could again walk to work, some in the unique way they did 100 years ago.
The interesting part, when you say they work down in the valley, is there's actually a tunnel that we hope someday can be opened up again that links National Avenue, or actually Pierce Street, to the valley via a tunnel. So people can walk from here and go to Miller Park rather than have to go around or go down into the valley for new businesses.
National Avenue is a major city thoroughfare, but residents and business owners say don't just pass through, stop and visit.
You don't take time to really look around because you're busy going from point A to point B, but there is really some wonderfully designed homes, very unique from even the Milwaukee bungalows. The architecture is just wonderful.
Well, we have probably a couple of the best draws in the city. We've got the domes on one end and we've got Miller Park on the other. So there isn't a focal point like you're looking for, but to each of these ethnic people, yeah, there's a focal point because this area probably has a greater concentration of businesses aimed at them than Mitchell Street or Burnham or Villard or Hampton or Silver Spring. This is the cultural center for many of these international people.
Sure, we have we do have some problems, but they're being addressed also. And I really believe cooperatively with the city, with our elected officials, with the police department, with some of the neighborhood organizations, that we will continue to thrive and be a very nice place for people to want to move to and stay here for many years like I have. I would like to see this area really boom, and I believe that it will down the line.
On a dry day, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District's 2 wastewater treatment plants combined will clean about 200 million gallons of wastewater. When it rains, the volume of water that pours into the sewer system can reach many times that amount. The plant's peak capacity is 330 million gallons a day. Rainwater is ultimately what overburdens the system, causing sewer overflows and basement backups. Critics and MMSD agree both are unacceptable. Deep tunnels collect over 400 billion gallons of wastewater. Millions has been spent on flood control projects such as those along Lincoln Creek and in Valley Park in the Menominee Valley. MMSD has developed retention ponds to capture large amounts of rainwater. Homeowners and businesses have been encouraged to disconnect downspouts from the sanitary sewer system. It's already a sophisticated treatment network serving more than 1 million Milwaukee area residents. What steps can be taken to further reduce sewer overflows and improve water quality? That question is being discussed throughout the region, and many of the solutions come with a heavy price tag. Joining me now to talk more about the challenges facing MMSD is Kevin Schaefer, Executive Director of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. And welcome to our program, first of all.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me.
The district seems to be in the news quite often, and among the events people are still talking about is the event last May with the dumping into the rivers in Lake Michigan. Tell us how that happened. What happened that time?
Well, we don't like to be in the news, as you know, and May event was a huge event. It was a event that dropped anywhere from 8 to 13 inches of rainfall throughout the service area, throughout our 28 communities. And just to put that in perspective, May normally sees a rainfall of about 3 inches. So even at the airport where they had 8 inches of rainfall, that airport normally sees 3 inches of rain. So we had huge volumes of water getting into the rivers, getting into people's yards, soaking into the ground. And we've had a lot of that water end up in the sanitary system itself. In a dry year like last year was, we treated about 62 billion gallons of flow. In the month of May this year, we treated 10 billion gallons of flow. So just to kind of put it in perspective, we had a lot of flow that came through the system in May, about 1/6 of what we would in a normal year. So it really is a unique storm that no system in the United States would have been able to handle.
You talked about a record amount being dumped into Lake Michigan, and yet there's also an explanation being given for what was included in that 4 billion gallons. It wasn't all sewage.
Well, and that's really a misconception that a lot of people have. When they hear this 4.6 billion gallons of raw sewage that goes into the lake, number one, it's not all raw sewage. We do not, I do not use the bathroom more when it's raining. We always produce about the same amount of sewage every day, but we have washing machines, we have dishwashers, we have your shower water. All that water gets into the sanitary system. It drains to the sanitary system. And we handle all of that flow almost all of the time. But when we have that flow, plus we mix in with it another billion or so, 4 billion gallons of rainwater, it overloads the system, and you can't take that water. The tunnel system itself has 405 million gallons of flow, and yet we filled that tunnel system twice in a week in May, And at the same time the tunnel was full, we were treating over 600 million gallons per day of water as well. So we're treating 600 million gallons of flow per day. We stored 400 million gallons in the tunnel, and we still filled the system up. I don't like overflows. The district doesn't like overflows. We're doing everything possible to prevent overflows. We're building new tunnel. We're expanding the treatment plants. But sometimes Mother Nature just throws more at you than you can really handle.
Is there a misperception among the general public that the deep tunnel system was meant to solve all this, to resolve all these problems?
I wasn't here, but I really think the deep tunnel was oversold in the 80s and early 90s, and that's not faulting anyone that was here before. I believe that people wanted a solution, and at the time that the tunnel was planned, designed, built, we were having 50 to 60 overflows a year, so we were having huge number of overflows. If you looked at that, that was like a month to 2 months a year we'd have an overflow in Milwaukee. I'm not sure that we heard a lot about those overflows back in the 70s, 80s. And as late as 1993, you know, just 11 years ago, we were having those numbers. The tunnel came online and we've dropped those overflows to 2.3 for combined sewer overflows. And we've dropped the number for separate sewer overflows from the tunnel to about 1.5. So we still have overflows. We have to do more to get rid of those overflows, or at least reduce the volume. 4.6 billion gallons is a huge number, but if you compare that to 97, 98, 99 very wet years here in Milwaukee, it's comparable to what we saw in those years as well.
You have a good news, bad news situation often, as you've just mentioned. You get the bad news with the dumping, and yet water quality, according to the science that you've seen, is better than it was years ago, and we have fewer dumpings, as you mentioned.
We have fewer dumpings, and water quality has improved. If you go back, 1972, the Clean Water Act passed, and that really set the impetus for moving forward. We moved forward in Milwaukee. We took some huge steps for water quality, and we're seeing the benefit of that now. If you look at the development along the river, the activities in the river and the lake, there's more activities, and the reason that is the rivers are cleaner than they were before. It's not just the science that shows the numbers are better, but it's also, you can see it, you can perceive it when you're on the riverfront. Still more work to do. We need to look at the next phase. The tunnel took care of really the point sources of pollution. Now we have a bigger problem because the next wave of pollution that's coming into the rivers is called non-point pollution, urban runoff. And you don't have a single pipe that you can just put something on and clean it up. It comes from more diffuse areas, and we really need to work on that as a community. It's a regional issue.
It is a regional issue because you're talking about, as you mentioned, runoff from farms, runoff from development that's happening throughout the region.
It's runoff everywhere. It's agricultural runoff, it's urban runoff, runoff from our buildings, from my yard, from my driveway, from my house. People need to understand that a drop of water that hits their property goes somewhere. It runs into a ditch, into a storm sewer, and into a sanitary sewer. We need to be cognizant of that drop of water, and we need to figure out how can we manage it better, and how can we make sure that as it goes through the water cycle, it stays cleaner than it is now.
You have a presentation that you provide for community groups. You gave it to members of the Milwaukee Common Council some weeks ago.
Yes.
We'd like to ask you to share with us a flavor of that presentation today.
Sure. And I'll speed through this. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay.
MMSD is a state-chartered regional agency. We provide both wastewater and flood management for 28 communities and over 1.1 million people. This covers an area of 420 square miles. And this doesn't include all the watersheds that drain into the area. We have a huge drainage area up above our system. We have 2 treatment plants that on a normal day will treat about 80 million gallons per day each, so about 160 million gallons total. In May, as I said earlier, we were treating 600 million gallons per day at each of those treatment plants. One is on Jones Island in downtown Milwaukee, and the other treatment plant, South Shore, is on the south side in Oak Creek. This is the system we have. It's about 300 miles of MMSD owned and operated sewers. There's 3,000 miles of sewer that are owned and operated by the 28 communities. So one of the challenges the district faces is we have water coming into our system from 28 different spigots that we have no control over the volume of that flow. There's no valve saying shut that water off. We need to work with our communities on that. And then each of the private properties in the area have a pipe that goes from their house to the street. That's the responsibility of the homeowner, and we need to work with them as well. Our system's very large. Just to give you perspective, it takes 13 hours for a drop of water to get from the northwest corner of Milwaukee County all the way down to South Shore where it's treated. So we're always looking a half a day ahead when we're looking at weather and we're watching a rainfall event. The deep tunnel system was built in the 1980s and put online in 1994. This graphic really depicts where that tunnel system is. It's not everywhere in the county as some people might think. The western leg goes right by Miller Park and goes out towards Interstate 45. Follows the Menominee River. The north end follows the Milwaukee River, and the south leg follows the Kinnickinnick River. The tunnel is 405 million gallons of storage. It's 300 feet below grade. It's about 19.5 miles long. Ranges from diameter from 17 to 32 feet. And this last bullet, everyone forgot, or everyone just didn't understand. But this system was built to have 1.4 overflows a year. And if you looked at our numbers, as I said earlier, we're pretty close to that number. We need to do better, but we're getting close to that number. But people thought, and they were told, it was going to virtually eliminate overflows. In some people's minds, virtually eliminate meant zero. This is a depiction of what a separate sewer looks like, a separate sewer system looks like. What you have in the blue is the rainwater that comes off of a roof, off the streets, goes into a storm sewer, which is that upper pipe. That storm sewer goes right to the river all the time. There's no treatment for storm sewers flow. The green line shows the flow that when you flush the toilet or when you take a shower or when you do your laundry, that water goes through a local sewer pipe, private sewer pipe, to the local system, where that flow is then relayed to our system and we treat it. So it starts at the private property, to the local system, to our system, to the treatment plants.
You have said, if I could interject here a moment, you have said in the past that in some situations it's preferable to have combined sewers because in that case all of the water is being treated in some way.
And the next depiction really shows that. A combined sewer, where this has a two-pipe system, a combined sewer has one pipe. And the advantage of a combined sewer system is water quality. Not quantity, but water quality. And with water quality, we're collecting all the street flow, all the rainfall, all that flow that hits that area of our combined sewer area. It hits that area and we treat it almost all the time. Now occasionally 2.3 times a year we'll have an overflow from the combined system, but we're getting better at those numbers and we're bringing those numbers down, and that's why you're seeing the Legislative Audit Bureau and other agencies say that water quality is improving in that area because we're capturing all those pollutants that our urban society is putting in the water.
But separation is something that is being looked at.
Separation,
among many things.
Yeah, we're looking at every alternative possible. We will leave no stone unturned to try to stop overflows. And separation is something we're going to look at, and we are looking at, but we have to weigh separation from a quantity standpoint of 2.3 overflows a year versus a quality standpoint. And my approach to this is that we need to keep water quality as our #1 goal, and we need to say, okay, we've had huge improvements in water quality, we need to do more, and what can we do? There are ways we could do some separation in the combined area that would get the best of both worlds, but we need to do it smart.